You already agreed to something. You just don't know it yet. That is not a hypothetical. Thousands of drivers every single year walk away from a traffic stop thinking everything went fine, only to sit in a courtroom months later and watch a prosecutor hold up a piece of paper with their signature on it. A piece of paper they never actually read. A piece of paper they signed in under 5 seconds because a cop in a uniform slid it through their window and said, in the calmest voice possible, "Just sign here." And they did. Because they were nervous. Because they wanted it to be over. Because they had absolutely no idea what they were actually agreeing to. That one signature, right there, has been used to admit guilt, waive hearings, authorize searches, and hand prosecutors everything they needed to secure a conviction, without the driver ever saying a single incriminating word. If that sounds terrifying, it should, because it is happening on roads all across this country every single day. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what you are about to learn could be the difference between walking away completely clean and signing a document that follows you for the rest of your life. I am going to break this down into 4 tactics, for things you need to know and say the next time a cop slides that clipboard through your window. Stay with me until the end because Tactic 4 is the one most people never hear, and it is the one that defense attorneys wish every single client knew before they ever got pulled over. I have analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and this is the exact moment where most people fall apart. The officer hands them the clipboard and everything they know, every right they have, disappears in about 3 seconds. The next few minutes could change that permanently for you. Stay locked in. Here is the reality of what is happening during that moment. Traffic stops feel fast. Your heart is already going. Your hands may already be shaking. The officer is standing at your window with a clipboard and a pen, and every single second of silence feels like pressure that is building against you. That pressure is not an accident. Officers are trained to create urgency, so that you act before you think. And here is what most people do not know. The document sliding through your window is not always a simple ticket. Sometimes it is a consent form. Sometimes it is a written waiver of your right to a formal hearing. Sometimes it is a document that acknowledges details the officer has already filled in, details that, once signed, the law treats as your voluntary confirmation of events. The law treats a signed document as your informed decision. It does not matter if you were never told what it meant. It does not matter if the officer made it sound like a routine formality. A signature is a signature, and prosecutors know exactly how to use it. That is the trap. And right now, I am going to show you exactly how to step around it. Tactic 1 is reading before you ever pick up the pen. This sounds obvious. Almost nobody actually does it when they are sitting in that car with an officer staring at them. Here is the reality of what actually happens in the moment. The officer hands you the clipboard. You feel the stare. You feel the silence. You feel like every second you hesitate is going to make things worse. So you grab the pen, you scribble your name, and you hand it back. Done. Except you just signed something you never read. Here is what they do not want you to know. You are legally allowed to read any document before you sign it. There is no law that says you must sign in 3 seconds. There is no rule that says hesitation is resistance. Watch what happens when you use this line instead of just grabbing the pen. You look at the officer calmly, and you say this. "I would like to read this before I sign it." That is 7 words. You are not refusing. You are not arguing. You are doing exactly what any reasonable adult should do before putting their name on any piece of paper. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court to establish that their client was careful, not complicit. When you say those words, you slow the entire moment down. The officer has to wait. You get to read. And what you find on that paper might completely change what you do next. The bad approach. Most drivers grab the pen without looking and hand the clipboard back in under 10 seconds, then find out in court that what they signed included a box the officer checked after the stop. The smart approach. You say, "I would like to read this before I sign it." And then you actually read every single line. If you cannot read it because it is dark or the print is too small, you say this: "I cannot read this clearly. Can you turn on your flashlight so I can review it before signing?" This is completely legal. You are not obstructing anything. You are protecting yourself. And if the officer tries to rush you, that behavior is captured on body cam footage, which at that point becomes your best friend. Tactic 2 is asking one direct question before you touch that pen. This tactic takes 3 seconds and it changes everything. Most people assume the document is just the ticket. They assume it is standard. They assume there is nothing unusual about it. Legal experts agree that this assumption is exactly how people end up convicted. Here is exactly what you say the moment that clipboard comes through your window. You look at the officer and you ask, "Can you tell me exactly what I am signing and what it means legally?" Say it calm. Say it flat. No attitude, no argument, just a clean, direct question. One of 3 things is then going to happen. The officer explains it clearly, which helps you. The officer gets vague and fumbles, which tells you something is off, or the officer says something like, "It just means you received the ticket," which you can verify by reading the document yourself. This question is completely legal. You have every right to understand what you are consenting to before you consent to it. This comes directly from Supreme Court rulings that establish consent must be knowing and voluntary. If you do not know what you are consenting to, your signature is not valid consent. Judges have thrown out signed documents in court specifically because the signer was never properly informed of what they were agreeing to. Former police officers have confirmed that this approach works because it creates a clear record that you asked, and that you were either properly informed or you were not. Either way, the record now exists in your favor. The bad approach. Most drivers take the clipboard, sign it without asking, and spend the next several months fighting in court over something they could have caught in 10 seconds. The smart approach. You ask, "Can you tell me exactly what I am signing and what it means legally?" Before you even pick up the pen. The officer is now on the record. His answer, or his refusal to answer, is now part of the official stop. If the officer cannot explain what you are signing in plain, simple language, that is your signal to slow way down. You do not have to sign anything you do not understand. And saying you did not understand it will not protect you in court if you signed anyway without asking. Asking the question is what actually protects you. Tactic 3 is knowing the difference between a ticket and a consent document. This is the big one. This is where most people get completely destroyed in court and never see it coming. A traffic ticket is a promise to appear in court or pay a fine. Signing it does not mean you are guilty. It means you received it and understand you have to respond. That kind of signature is usually required by law. But there is another kind of document that can look nearly identical to a ticket. A consent form. Sometimes it is a written waiver. Sometimes it is an acknowledgement that you agree to a search, or that you are confirming details the officer has already written down above your signature line. Here is exactly how to tell the difference before you sign anything. You read the top of the document first. You look for the words consent, waiver, authorization, or agree. If you see any of those words anywhere on that page, you stop completely. You do not sign until you understand exactly what that word is doing in that sentence. Here is exactly what you say if you see anything that looks like a consent or waiver. You look at the officer and you say, "I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation." Memorize that line. What you are doing is drawing a legal boundary. You are willing to sign for the ticket. You are not willing to sign away any of your rights. I have analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the officers who attempt to slip consent forms in alongside tickets get noticeably quieter the moment a driver uses that line, because now there is a clear record that you specifically did not consent. You cannot be arrested for refusing to sign a consent form. You could only be required to sign a citation acknowledging receipt. Anything beyond that is your choice. The bad approach. Most drivers see the officers pinpointing at the signature line, and they sign every page without checking which one is the citation and which one is a consent form. Those signed consent forms then show up in court as evidence that the driver voluntarily agreed to everything. The smart approach: you read every page, look for consent language, and say, "I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation," before you put a single mark on any paper. Most people watching this have already clicked away. If you are still here, you are in the small percentage of drivers who actually take their rights seriously. The next tactic is the one that ties everything together. This is the one defense attorneys wish every client already knew before they got pulled over. Tactic 4 is the closing statement that protects everything you just did. You have read the document. You have asked what it means. You have identified whether it is a ticket or a consent form. Now, before you sign anything at all, you use this one final line. You look at the officer and you say this out loud, clearly, so it is captured on body cam. "I am signing this citation only to acknowledge receipt, and I am not admitting guilt or consenting to anything beyond that acknowledgement." Say it before you sign. Say it slow. Say it clearly. Then sign. What that line does is create an official verbal record that your signature had a specific and limited meaning. It boxes in your signature legally. It prevents a prosecutor from standing up in court and telling a jury that your signature was an admission of anything. Defense attorneys use this exact line because it turns a routine signature into a protected act. This comes directly from case law around the legal concept of limited consent. Courts have recognized that a signature given with an explicit verbal limitation does not carry the same legal weight as an unrestricted signature. When you say it out loud on camera, it becomes part of the permanent record of the stop. No one can reinterpret your signature after the fact. Let me walk you through all 4 tactics working together in a single real traffic stop scenario, so you can see exactly how this looks in practice. You are pulled over for rolling a stop sign. The officer runs your license and comes back with a clipboard. The wrong approach, the officer says, "Just sign here." You grab the pen and sign without reading. The officer thanks you and leaves. 2 weeks later, you receive a court notice and discover that one of the pages you signed included a written acknowledgement of the violation, which the officer used to push for a higher fine and a conviction, because you already signed a document confirming the details. You had no idea. Now the right approach, using everything you just learned. The officer hands you the clipboard and says, "Just sign here." You pause. You say, "I would like to read this before I sign it." You take 30 seconds and read every line. You notice the second page has the word waiver at the top. You ask, "Can you tell me exactly what I am signing and what it means legally?" The officer explains that the second page is a waiver of your right to a formal hearing. You say, "I do not consent to any waivers or agreements beyond acknowledging receipt of this citation." The officer removes that page or makes a note of your refusal. You then say out loud, before signing the citation, "I am signing this citation only to acknowledge receipt, and I am not admitting guilt or consenting to anything beyond that acknowledgement." You sign. You drive away. In court, your attorney uses the body cam footage to show that you never waived your rights, never admitted guilt, and specifically limited your consent at every step. That is the difference between knowing these 4 tactics and not knowing them. In a few days, I am dropping the video on what to do when a cop says they can smell something in your car. Subscribe right now so you do not miss it, because that situation shuts down one of the most abused moves in traffic stop history, and it results in wrongful arrests every single day. Here is your quick recap of everything you just learned. You always read the document before you pick up the pen. You ask what you are signing and what it means legally so the officer is on the record. You look for consent and waiver language, and you refuse to sign anything beyond the citation itself. And you say your limiting statement out loud on camera before signing, so your signature can never be twisted against you in a courtroom. Most people have no idea any of these steps exist. You now do. That gives you more legal protection during a traffic stop than the overwhelming majority of drivers on the road today. Use it. Subscribe to this channel right now so you never miss another video like this one. Every week we break down the exact laws, the exact words, and the exact tactics that protect your rights in the moments when it matters most. Your rights are real, but they only work when you know how to use them. Stay sharp. Stay safe.